ask them to take that away. So today, we enjoy ourselves. We look after each other. And we sit down next to our ancestors and make the right decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uncle Major Mugi Sumner, for that beautiful welcome, and it was just stunning, so thank you very much. Our next welcome to country is from Jakira Telfla. She is a Malawiri and Mianya, the dry forest clan of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains. She also has cultural ties and ancestral ties to the Narungga and Wari clan. Takara is a lead dancer for the Yalaka dance group, Yalaka meaning old wisdom and new ways, and the South Australian coordinator for the Yes campaign. She stands for the injustices of her people and for her culture, ensuring it's staying strong and alive as a carrier for the younger generations. Jakira will now share a greeting to Spirit of Place.
Namani, Nyanyari Jakira Wario Malawara Targetin Nyai. Nigorni Nyadlayarta Bukiana Medawan Nyai Targeti. My name is Jakira, second born girl, and I come from the Dry Forest clan of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide region. I'm also from the Wari people, the Wind people of the Narungga Nation on the bottom end of the York Peninsula. Ngai Chili Ninkamorendi Kumaka Imberendi, Tawalami and Ayarta. My friends, please recognize our spirit and our people and our place. I'm very honoured to be here to greet you to the spirit of this place, Mayoki, Mina, Yarta, which is the place of the northern wind and the northern people. And that wind is very important because it carries our message. And I'm sure that today it's asking us to listen, because that wind, that's how the old people come. And that's when they tell us what to do. And I want to acknowledge the old people that are in the wind today, but those that are in this place and those that are here in spirit that couldn't be here today to see this and to be a part of this, because we do this for them. And I stand here as a carrier of song and spirit and ceremony, and I stand here from a strong lineage of women, and I do this for my grandmothers. And it's very important to be here as a young voice and as a carrier of that. But I greet you to Tandanyaga, which is the traditional place of Adelaide, and it's the dreaming place of the red kangaroo. And it's funny that that kangaroo never goes backwards, only forwards. Yeah. And I think that speaks to how important it is that this is in South Australia, as we have before and will continue to lead in this country and in this world. Now I'd like to share a little bit of Oka, speaking in the same way, and thank you. I'm very honoured to be alongside Uncle Mugi Sumner as well, and to have that balance of the men and the women. But it's also just sharing some Oka, and very important thing for us in this country. Just acknowledging as well the four directions, but also the lands and waters that we gather on today, but the lands and waters that you all have come from to be here and to share this last breath. Thank you. Nakara.
Thank you, Jakira. Thank you. That was just stunning. Thank you for sharing with us and sharing culture with us today. So we all know why we are here today. just checking. So the up-and-coming referendum on constitutional recognition through a voice. Today is a truly historic day. Today we take the next steps forward towards recognition. This is a moment in Australian history unlike any in living memory. And getting here was not always easy. In 2017, after so many years of hard work, nearly 250 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders and elders from across Australia issued the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Together, they called for recognition in our Constitution through a voice. This idea came from Indigenous peoples themselves, an invitation for all Australians to walk together for a better future. So many people have stood together in support for the Uluru Statement and to a voice. And I am proud to introduce one of those people to the stage now. So please welcome our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese.
My fellow Australians, for many years, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have advocated for constitutional recognition through a voice. Our government, along with every single state and territory government, has committed to it. Legal experts have endorsed it. People on all sides of the parliament have backed it. Faith groups and sporting codes and local councils and businesses and unions have embraced it. An army of volunteers from every part of this great nation are throwing all of their energy behind it. Now, my fellow Australians, you can vote for it. The idea for a voice came from the people and it will be decided by the people. Today I announce that Referendum Day will be the 14th of October. On that day, every Australian will have a once-in-a-generation chance to bring our country together and to change it for the better. To vote for recognition, listening and better results. And I ask all Australians to vote yes. Now, referendums come around much less often than elections. This will be the first one this century. And they're very different because on October 14th, you are not being asked to vote for a political party or for a person. You're being asked to vote for an idea, to say yes to an idea whose time has come. To say yes to an invitation that comes directly from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people themselves, a proposal that thousands of elders and leaders and communities all over our country have worked on for well over a decade. A change supported by more than 80% of Indigenous Australians. Constitutional recognition through a voice, a way for all of us to recognise Indigenous Australians and their history in our Constitution, and a form of recognition that will importantly make a positive difference to their lives and their futures. A practical way of dealing with issues that, despite all of the good intentions in this world, no Australian government has been able to get right before. The Voice will be a committee of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, local representatives from every state and territory, the regions, remote communities, as well as the Torres Strait Islands. A committee of Indigenous Australians, chosen by Indigenous Australians, giving advice to government so that we can get better results for Indigenous Australians. The Voice is about advice. The Parliament and government that Australians vote for in the normal way every 3 years will still be responsible for decisions and laws and funding, just as it always has been. With a voice, though, we will be able to hear directly from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities about the challenges they face in health and education, in jobs and housing. And we'll be able to learn about the things that are working in local areas so we can replicate them and make them work right around the country. Learning from communities in Arnhem Land, where the parents and teachers cooperate to make sure children are going to school and aiming high. Or the health services employing Indigenous nurses to deliver health checks and immunisations in remote communities. Or Indigenous rangers caring for our environment with knowledge built up over tens of thousands of years. There are local success stories out there. Just imagine the progress we could make with a voice connecting the regions with the nation. And giving locals a say, of course, means that we save money too, because we'll be making sure the funding actually reaches the people on the ground. No more waste, better results where they are needed. My fellow Australians, what Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people want for their children is what you want for yours. Staying healthy, doing well at school, finding a job they love, being safe and leading fulfilling lives. That's what they are asking you to say yes to at this referendum. The same opportunity for their children to make a good life for themselves. In the words of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, when we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish. That's the change that we, as Australians, can make happen. Of course, voting yes won't fix everything overnight. We're talking about challenges built up over generations, and they will take time to address. But voting yes means we will finally have the right approach in place so we can start finding the solutions. We can make this change together, and then we will make it work together with a voice that's independent from day-to-day politics so that it can plan for the long term. And let's be very clear about the alternative, because voting no leads nowhere. It means nothing changes. Voting no closes the door on this opportunity to move forward. I say today, don't close the door on constitutional recognition. Don't close the door on listening to communities to get better results. Don't close the door on an idea that came from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people themselves. And don't close the door on the next generation of Indigenous Australians. Vote yes. Vote yes for recognition. Vote yes for listening. Vote yes for better results. Vote yes is a change for the better that all of us can make together. We all get one vote and we all get an equal say. And if something is unclear to you, or you haven't even had a chance to think about this yet, I encourage you, ask questions, because if you're unsure, it's easy to find out more. Have a listen to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders like Noel Pearson, Arnie Pat Anderson, Megan Davis, Marcia Langton, Tom Calmer and Tanya Hosch. Trailblazers working with the next generation like Yvonne Goolagong or Eddie Betts or Jonathan Thurston, or respected Liberals like Premier Jeremy Rockcliffe, Ken Wyatt, Kate Carnell, Sean Gordon, Bridget Archer, Julian Leeser, Fred Chaney. Have a read of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. Just one page, full of grace and generosity, inviting all Australians to walk together to a better future. Have a chat to the Yes campaign volunteers at your train station or shopping centre, and have a look, importantly, at the words of the question and the words to be added to the Constitution. They're not long. The question is a proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve this proposed alteration? Straightforward, clear, as are the provisions. It's the advantage of working on it for so long. First, the recognition. It says this: in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the First Peoples of Australia. That's what it says. Simple, clear, straightforward. Then the what? There shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Again, straightforward, clear. The second provision: the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice may make representations to the Parliament and the Executive Government of the Commonwealth on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. That's the what. What will it do? That's what it will do. Straightforward, clear, unambiguous. And then the how, including a clear declaration of the primacy of our Parliament. It says this, point 3, the Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have power to make laws with respect to matters relating to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice, including its composition, functions, powers and procedures. Again, pretty clear, pretty straightforward. Recognition, listening to advice, Parliament continuing as decision maker. That is the clear, positive and practical request from Indigenous Australians. That is the handout asking us, non-Indigenous Australia, to just grasp that hand of friendship. And that is what we can vote yes for. My fellow Australians, our Australian story goes back 65,000 years. And what a privilege we have of sharing this continent with the oldest continuous culture on earth. But our story is not finished yet. It's up to all of us to write the next chapter together. And we can start by writing one word: yes. in the history of our great nation, the wonderful acts of national progress and the great advances in fairness have always required hard work. There were arguments here when South Australia, something they're very proud of and should be, led the world in giving women the right to vote. There were arguments made against federation and the minimum wage, Medicare and multiculturalism. And before the 1967 referendum, before Vincent Lingiari, before Mabo, before the apology. But the great story of our country through the generations is that Australians come together to answer these calls for change. We rise to the moment, like the kangaroo and the emu on our coat of arms. They never go backwards, they just go forwards. And so do we. When it's done, when we see the joy and the celebration and the difference to people's lives, the only question we ever ask ourselves when these changes occur is, why didn't we do it earlier? Yes. And it will be the same this time when we come together and vote yes, because we will have a way forward together. On October 14, there is nothing for us to lose, and there is so much for Australia to gain. There is no downside here, only upside. Friends, many times when I've spoken about this change, I've asked, if not now, when? This is it. October 14 is our time. It's our chance. It's a moment calling out to the best of our Australian character. For Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, this has been a marathon. For all of us, it is now a sprint. And across the finish line is a more unified, more reconciled Australia with greater opportunity for all. That's why thousands of people have volunteered already, many of whom have never worked on any kind of campaign before. This is a once-in-a-generation chance, and Australians from across the generations are working together to make it happen. I say to all those volunteers, keep knocking on doors, keep making calls, keep having those conversations with your colleagues in workplaces across the land, because this change is supported by employers and unions alike, with your teammates in every local club, because this is a cause backed by every single sporting code, with your fellow worshippers in every faith, because all faiths have given their support to this proposal, with multicultural communities, because they know what it means to celebrate and recognise tradition and culture. Have those conversations with your family and friends, your parents and grandparents, because with your energy and enthusiasm, this referendum can be won. And when yes wins, all Australians will win. So in a spirit of generosity and optimism, vote yes. In recognition of 65,000 years of history, vote yes. With hope for a better future, vote yes. Vote yes on October 14. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. I recently saw our Prime Minister at Gama, and I said it was the first time I'd ever woohooed a Prime Minister, and now this is the second time I've woohooed a Prime Minister. So thank you very much. Those words were just what we needed. They were inspiring and passionate from the heart. So thank you. Can we please give him another round of applause? So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who's Tanya Hosch. She's a Torres Strait Islander woman and a lifelong activist for constitutional recognition. She is the first Indigenous person and only the second woman to be appointed in the executive position at the AFL. South Australia's Australian of the Year in 2021 and a key campaigner at the Yes 23. So please welcome Tanya Hosch.
Stop, you'll make me cry and I haven't even started yet, and I'm a crier. I acknowledge we're here on the land of the amazing, resilient Kaurna peoples today. And I thank Uncle Moogie and Jakira Telfer for their tremendous, generous welcome to country. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for setting the date and setting a leadership standard for change. Thank you. There's so many other people in this room I want to thank, but there's no time for that. But you know who you are, and I wouldn't be here today without you. I'm honoured to be here today, to be part of this moment of significance, because every so often a defining moment comes along. A moment that teaches us profound truths about ourselves and each other, and in this case, about our nation. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and other Australians have been talking about this moment for a long time, and I mean a long time. My first crack at speaking about constitutional recognition came along when I was talked into speaking at the National Press Club in February 2013 on behalf of the Recognise movement. And back then I said, there comes a time in the life of every nation when it must put right the injustices of the past. A time to say no more to exclusion and prejudice. A time for us to be our better selves. A movement is growing to recognise the long and impressive first chapter of our national story and banish the lingering absence of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from our constitution. For remaining silent about the long and impressive first chapter of our national story of this land, we are saying one or two things. Either this chapter didn't happen, or that it is unimportant, and we know both of these things to be patently untrue. History is calling us. It is urging us to finish the work of 1967, when more than 90% of Australians voted yes. We answered that call unequivocally, emphatically. We were not daunted by the fear of failure. We believed in each other. We believed that Australians would opt for inclusion over exclusion, and we did. Now this generation has to complete the task. We're fortunate that the great 67 generation is with us yet, in spirit and body, and they guide us still. This is a historic moment in a long journey towards justice and recognition. It is a journey that long predates the Constitutional Convention and other processes that culminated in the historic Uluru Statement. But it was the Uluru Statement that gave shape to the ambitions we now seek to have reflected in our Constitution. The Voice proposal comes from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. The Voice, however, goes beyond a seat at the decision-making table and acknowledging Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of Australia. It's bigger than that. It is an opportunity to celebrate and unite, as the Prime Minister has said, to make a great country even greater. An opportunity like this is not only historic, it's also rare. Today we have the Prime Minister, parliamentarians across the spectrum and community organisations throughout the nation coming together to say it is finally time to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our Constitution, time to listen to the voices of communities on the problems they face and the solutions they need, time to build a better future for all Australians. This is what the Voice means to me and First Nations peoples. The Australian Constitution is ours. It belongs to Australians, and it's ours to change. It's a principle as old as democracy itself. A simple right to be heard when laws are made about us. And yet, 226 years after the British planted in a flag in a land that belonged to someone, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians still have no voice. But with clarity and determination, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have asked our fellow Australians for a voice. We asked on the Day of Mourning in 1938. We asked in the bark petitions of the 1960s and the Barunga Statement of 1988. And we asked in every major report for the last 30 years. And now we ask all Australians to stand with us, to acknowledge our remarkable cultures and resilience, and to vote yes with us to finally have that voice. Because what has our voicelessness delivered? Poverty and trauma, policy failure and heartbreak, disadvantage and devastation. This is the poisonous legacy of our voicelessness. And this is what the opponents of the Voice offer Australia more of. So let's look at the data for First Nations Australians in reality. Let's look at the Close the Gap agreement. Target 1, close the gap in life expectancy, not on track. Target 2, healthy baby birth weight, not on track. Target 4, child development, not on track. Target 14, reduce suicide rates, not on track. Target 7, young people in work or education and training, not on track. When we are not making progress, what are we left with? In terms of our health, we know that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people endure a burden of disease 2 to 3 times higher than non-Indigenous Australians. And now I want to share a deeply personal and real story about this data. It's too easy to speak of numbers without speaking about people and families and communities. A little over 2 weeks ago, I had my lower right leg amputated. And so, having left hospital only yesterday, I'm standing here on one leg today. No, I'm not clapping because I don't know much how longer I can do it. I have type 2 diabetes and I contracted a related disease that I have battled for 3 years and across 6 surgeries, trying to avoid the loss of my limb. I'm not without privilege and access to services, but still the service design let me down. I know that if we already had a permanent voice in place, there would be people around that table that understand my story, my experience, and what could make things better and different for me and for people like me. We have seen Indigenous advisory bodies open and close. We have been left without a durable or genuine say in how the matters that affect us are to be managed. And during the same time, if we continue to do things the same way as we always have, we will get the same results. This is all the no case offers. Leave things as they are, and that is just not acceptable. We can close gaps and make better policies by giving communities a voice, by doing something simple, by listening to the voices of communities who know the problems they face and the solutions they need. It is common sense that has escaped generations of non-Indigenous decision makers. There is a lot of noise about the scope of the voice, and some of it is genuine, but some of it is sheer mischief. And we say to the mischief makers that we cannot sit back while decisions that affect us are made without our input and without our expertise. We are not interested in being on the periphery of daily life anymore. We want to change life-altering policies that have made hardship seem insurmountable. We want to get out of the department of disadvantage and into the world of hope through opportunity and equal outcomes. So to meet this moment of history, this huge moment for our country, we have built the largest grassroots campaign ever seen in Australia. Last weekend, we knocked on 20,000 doors. This week, tens of thousands more. Our army of volunteers swells by thousands every week, and now they number 35,000. We are out at train stations and beaches, parks and curbsides. There are also long walks and visits to friends, everyone sharing the word and talking to people through the issues. And the issue is very simple, a guaranteed voice on the things that create inequality and keep people back, a guaranteed voice to instil hope and realise our national identity. On the morning after this vote, we will know something new about ourselves and each other, and it could be an either or. But if we vote yes, we will have seized the moment of profound national unity. We will ensure the first Australians have a voice when laws are made about us, and our generation of Australians will have delivered a moment of hope and a better future for us all. A moment of optimism, a moment of respect, a moment that says to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, we stand with you, we see you, we need to hear you, and never again will we not recognise your unending connection to this land. So today we call every Australian of good heart to action. We cannot achieve a resounding yes without you. So we need every single supporter off the sidelines and into the campaign, organising, activating, door knocking, handing out, making calls, talking to Australians in every waking minute between now and Judgment Day. We cannot waste a single minute or hour or day. We ask you to ask everyone you know to sign up at yes23.com.au, to volunteer everything you can between now and that vote in 6 weeks' time. Let's leave everything on the field, no stone unturned, and let's get this done. It's the fair thing to do, it's the just thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. Let's honour the 1967 referendum result. Let's again get together and get this done. Vote yes.
Thank you, Tanya, for such a motivational speech, and may the spirit of our ancestors be with you in your healing journey. We thank you for being with us on this very special day. Yeah, absolutely. Our next speaker today is Professor Megan Davis. She is a Cobble Cobble Aboriginal woman from the Barungum Nation in southwest Queensland. Earlier this year, we caught a glimpse of what drives Megan as she was featured on Australian Story. It's hard to believe that any young person would be walking around with a copy of the Australian Constitution in their back pocket, but that was exactly what she did. Some would say it was the start of her work in the constitutional reform. For more than a decade now, Megan has been advising, challenging and campaigning to get our mob into the Constitution. In 2017, on the anniversary of the 1967 referendum, Megan read the Uluru Statement to Australia for the first time. 6 years later, we are on the cusp of turning that invitation into a reality. So please welcome the co-chair of Uluru Dialogues, Professor Megan Davis.
Well, here we are, 6 long years since the Uluru Statement from the Heart was issued to the Australian people as an invitation to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. We are here, October 14. We are now under 7 weeks away from a historic ballot where the nation will finally recognise the First Nations people of Australia in the Constitution. Drafted in the 1890s, the Constitution expressly excluded our people for 67 years. We were not part of the national story. This referendum is about correcting this. It is about recognising First Nations peoples through a voice. I studied constitutions because they do have a role in shaping a nation and its culture. Constitutions create the material conditions that allow populations and communities to flourish. This is why they are so important. Our Constitution has done a pretty good job for most Australians, but not for all. We were excluded from the constitutional order. 1967 was momentous because it neutralised that exclusion. But the manifestation of that original exclusion is difficult to erase without change, without structural change and recognition. That is what this referendum is about. This referendum is about positive empowerment, recognition through a voice. 6 years ago, when our men and women in the regional dialogues were asked, "What is meaningful recognition to you?" What was their answer? They chose recognition as having a more active role in the democratic life of the Australian state. They chose recognition through a voice. Now, I want the politicians to close their ears because I'm going to say that not everyone wants to be a politician. And our First Nations men and women in the dialogues who live in communities, they choose to stay on country and devote their lives to the service of their people, of their culture, of their communities. They should not have to move to Canberra to have a say in the laws and policies made about their lives. They should not have to be personal friends with bureaucrats or politicians or have ministers on speed dial in order to influence the way their communities are funded and the way resources are allocated. This is why recognition through a voice is an effective way to bring empowerment and accountability to Indigenous affairs. That will lead to better quality laws when we are at the table and better quality policies when we are at the table, because consultation will no longer be superficial. Consultation will no longer exclude our communities, and we will have better outcomes and better results because of that. We know that well over 80% of our communities support a voice. We also know that those who don't support a voice get 80% of the media coverage. But our people are a pragmatic and practical people. When I hear some people say, the voice is not strong enough, how can anyone ever say that our voices, together, united, is not strong enough? This is about changing the way we do things in communities. It is about recognising our communities through a voice. It is about listening, and it is about acting. Best practice globally tells us that human beings are more likely to flourish if they have control over their lives, to dream, to have vision, to plan. This is what the voice is about. It permits our people to have a seat at the table. The drafters of the Australian Constitution did not leave it to politicians to change the Constitution, and there are many constitutions in the world like that. They could have. Instead, they left it to we, the people. This is about our agency as Australians to make change together. This is about unity of purpose. At Uluru in 2017, our old people said, let's write a one-page logic to the Australian people for why we need this change. Recognition through a voice. We thought all Australians can see that the status quo does not work for our people. And after all that has happened to our people, they chose to offer an olive branch, a hand of peace, a hand of friendship, to unite the nation. We invited our fellow Australians to be part of the solution, to listen to us, to walk with us, to use your voice to help give us one. Recognition through a voice. Our people chose to present a one-page invitation, an opportunity, a roadmap to a solution. Not more of the same, not the status quo, not business as usual. A vote for no is an endorsement of no change. It is a vote for the status quo. In the Uluru Statement, our people chose generosity, we chose unity, we chose real change, and we chose love. And 6 years after we read out the Uluru Statement to the Australian people, the time is now to vote yes. And again, we ask all Australians on this very important day to walk with us in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. Thank you.
thank you, Megan. It's truly inspiring. Thank you so much for the work that you've been doing too. We very, very much appreciate it. Now, every one of our speakers today has been absolutely fantastic, telling their own stories and their journeys that they have shared with us. But the one thing that unites them all and is an absolute commitment to delivering a yes vote in the referendum, which is, we now know, will be October the 14th. Thank you for that. And it's places like here in Elizabeth and across South Australia that we know are going to make a difference in getting the vote that we want to see. So closing here today is someone whose determination to deliver the vote is beyond question. He knows only too well what a yes vote will mean here in South Australia, but also across the country. So please give a huge welcome to South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas.
Prime Minister, friends, we stand here with our feet firmly on the lands of the Kaurna people. I pay my respect to their elders past, present and emerging. But the way we pay our respects here in South Australia is not with our words, but in our deeds. Prime Minister, you have chosen to launch this campaign here in South Australia. It is not a coincidence of history that the campaign to launch the 1967 referendum also started right here on Kaurna Yurta. But allow me to speak plainly. I don't know how South Australians will vote on October 14. None of us do. But what we do know is that South Australians are capable of making the really big decisions at the really important moments. That's because South Australians have always been ready to lead, particularly when it comes to taking the aspiration of the fair go and transforming it into a living truth. That's why this was the first place anywhere in the world to adopt universal franchise, giving women the right to vote and the ability to run for Parliament. That's why this is the first state to outlaw discrimination on the basis of race or ethnicity. That's why this is the first state to decriminalise homosexuality. That's why we were the first state to legislate on Aboriginal land rights. These changes were all met at the time by opposing voices, predicting vague and terrible consequences, all of which mysteriously never materialised. In fact, the opposite is true. Each of those changes made our great state even greater. Because, to put it simply, South Australians care about one another. And that is also true of our nation as a whole. We live in an amazing country. We are resourceful, innovative people with living standards that truly make us the envy of the world. But what sets us apart isn't mineral wealth, sustained economic growth, or natural beauty. It's something deep within our national character. We don't celebrate the primacy of the individual in the way they do in the United States, nor do we identify with the deference the English pay to their establishment. Our national identity is carved from an ethos of egalitarianism, our fundamental sense of fairness, an affection that extends beyond those to whom we are related, our national identity is found in each other. It's a unique, liberating trait. It's what's allowed us to open our hearts with warmth and generosity to those who have come across the seas. We have welcomed waves of migration, people coming in any number of circumstances. And each and every day, we enjoy the benefits of living with and learning from a rich diversity of perspectives. We are right to be proud of what we have built together. The peace, the prosperity, the potential. It's a remarkable Australian success story. But running parallel is a remarkable Australian tragedy. It is plainly unjust that of all the cultures, colours, creeds, languages, ethnicities that now call this land home, there is only one that is so much more disadvantaged than all the rest. There is only one group of people who has too often been left behind over the last 200 plus years. And tragically, they are the very people who for over 65,000 years provided great care and custodianship to the land everyone else calls home today. But yet, despite the history of dispossession, displacement and despair, in May 2017, our First Nations people came together from across the continent in one of the largest efforts in the history of our modern nation to consolidate all of their hopes, their aspirations into one extraordinary document, the Uluru Statement from the Heart. The best distillation that I've heard on the message of the Uluru Statement from the Heart was made in a recent speech at the Adelaide Town Hall by a man who is in this room today, Mr. Noel Pearson. In that speech, following the reading of the statement, Noel described it in these words. No, I don't pretend to do your words justice, but they are worthy of repetition. Faith, hope, love. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is about faith in the possibilities, faith in the Australian people, faith against so much history of undeserving of faith. How can a people against whom so many faithless acts were performed over 2 centuries revive a faith in their own country? And yet Uluru is a statement of faith. It's also a statement of hope. From the bowels of despair about our place in this country, we have an expression of hope for the future. And love. This is about bringing the country together. It is about our love for our own country, notwithstanding the lack of love that our people have experienced for too long in this, our own home. We don't know what the outcome of this referendum will be, nor does anyone know the outcome on the October the 14th. But we do know this generation of Australians are descendants of all those who have chosen to act with generosity and foresight before us. If our forefathers and mothers can say yes to universal franchise, if our great-grandparents can say yes to waves of migration, if our grandparents can say yes in 1967, if our parents can say yes to land rights, then this generation is capable of saying yes to an advisory committee. In 6 short weeks, when we wake up on October 15, we need to be able to look our neighbour in the eye and honestly say, we did our bit. We accepted the invitation. We played our part in the long lineage of Australian acts of generosity. When we cast our votes, allow us to summon the courage to be motivated by faith, hope and love, motivated by the pursuit of a better future over an unsatisfactory status quo. Australians care about one another, always will care about one another. Let's give Indigenous Australians a greater say over their futures. Let's give them a voice to Parliament. Let's vote yes on October 14.
Thank you, Peter. You're not only a wonderful human, but you are a wonderful Premier. So thank you for your strength in your words and your commitment and your passion. Thank you very much. Can we please thank Peter again? So I look around this room and I see just magnificent humans that have been a huge part of where we stand today. And I want to thank all of you, and I think we should thank them all. We can't go through their names, but we can see them and we can thank them with our applause and our love. So thank you very much for what you've been doing. So very, very grateful for you all. So thank you for your work and your efforts so far and everything that we will do now together in the next 6 weeks. Together, we will deliver a yes vote, and together we will make history. Thank you all, and we'll see you on October the 14th.
Well, there you have it. Australians will be voting at the Indigenous Voice